I think we are live. So, good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon to all the people who are following us remotely with the live streaming. I'm Alessandro Gropelli, Deputy Director General at ETNO, the European Telecom Association, and I'll be moderating today's session. And our job today is to discuss quantifying the enabling impact of technologies on the climate. But before we do that, we are lucky enough to have with us Daniele Violetti, who is a Senior Programs Director at the UNFCCC. He is joining us directly from the negotiations, so I think that the best thing we can do is now ask Daniele to do the keynotes, introduce a bit our panel, and also maybe give us some news from the negotiating table. Daniele, over to you.
Yes, seems so. Thank you, good evening to all of you. Pleasure to be here. I'm entering definitely in a conversation in which I'm not an expert. I'll more into the, as you said, negotiation side of things and looking at the various areas in the programmatic areas of the Secretariat. But let me say a few things about the topic of tonight, and then I'll close up with what is happening at COP28, and focusing really on the role of ICT and sustainable development. So I think we need two sides of action in this context. One relating to green ICT, and the other one on ICT for green. The first side is really the decarbonization of the ICT sector. This is an important, being an important player, and the contribution from the sector are really relevant. And as well as enhancing the circularity of the ICT sector. So using natural resources within the limits of our planetary boundaries. Reducing waste is one typical classic example. While we talk about ICT for green, the concept of providing for solution and satisfying the needs of human beings, so that all these actions are aligned with sustainable development and definitely taking action on climate. If you look at this, there are, let's say, three important elements that I think are worth to mention. The first one is to scale up the deployment of existing technology and solutions. So more is needed, and that's clear, and there is no doubt about that. And this can happen by innovation technology. We are in the innovation hub here, having harmonized standards, and of course relating to the skill of the labor force. This is something that remains critical. Then we have a second side, which is the development of new solutions, and then of course going to looking at what are the goals. The goals for the Paris agreements are very, very clear in terms of mitigation are the 1.5 being the main goal of the Paris Agreement. But I will come back also to other type of goals and linking it to the negotiation. And then the third is really the collaboration aspect. We are seeing it, within the context of the UN, for example, all the regulatory aspects, the standardization policy, which is mainly what is happening in the context of a multilateral process like ours, creates the collaboration among nations. At the same time, we need the cooperation of non-party stakeholders, the private sector, companies, and working together as we all move to the same goal. So these are really a chapeau, an introduction of these aspects. And I want to go back to the point of the goal briefly, because while on mitigation we have clear goal, right? Reduction of emission, minus 43% by 2030, 1.5. In the Paris Agreement, we don't have the same for adaptation. And that's why one of the important outcomes of this COP should be the agreement on the global goal for adaptation, which will provide frameworks for at least determining, and we are not having probably a number attached to it, but it will be something that is very important. And we have the goal on finance, the famous 100 billion a year, which seems now that has been reached, but more importantly, next year there will be at COP29 the very important decision on the new collective quantified goal, which will kick in as of 2025 for the years to come. We don't even know for how long. And this will be a very important outcome of next year, because we'll determine as well the level of ambition in terms of the support that is given from developed country to developing country, but also the participation of other actors, including the private sector. So we had a very good start of the COP. Of course, the decision taken already on the first day on the new fund, the funding arrangement for loss and damage, is historic. Hundreds of millions are flowing already. We have probably, by the end of today, we may reach 1 billion already. So let's see. So it's really a great start, and all the rooms are negotiating, and now the focus is really on the outcome of the first global stocktake, where do we expect not only an assessment on what has been happening and unfortunately what has not been happening, but more importantly informing the new NDCs in 2025, so the new level of ambition. And let's see what else we can come out of COP28. So very good start. We need to keep this going, and all this comes, of course, in the context of a global climate action at all levels. So wish you a good discussion, and thanks for having me. Thank you.
So, grazie mille to Daniele for stopping by and finding time in his busy agenda. We can now slowly go towards our panel, and I'll give you a round of introductions just to let you know with who we are discussing today. We will start now with Ilias Iacovidis, who is advisor for green and digital transformation at DG Connect. Ilias, please feel free to take the stage. We will then be joined by also Adam Eldman, who is head of sustainability EMEA at Google. We have Maya Omar Zabal, director of environment and human rights at Telefonica. We have Pastora Valero, who is SVP for international government affairs at Cisco. And we have Chris White, who is president of the NEC Laboratories. So today our discussion is around quantifying that enabling impact. We heard about it. Investment is incredibly important if we are to make this green digital transition happen. But of course you cannot invest before you cannot quantify this enabling potential. So I would like to invite Ilias from the European Commission to explain to us what is this European Green Digital Coalition, and why are we having this debate today. Ilias, over to you.
Thank you. I cannot speak without my feet, so I'll be moving. That would be a nightmare for the camera, I'm sure. But welcome, everybody here. First of all, my association may not be known. For you to know, for example, we had a statistics from another panel like this in the European Union. We had 5,000 online views. So there are much more people behind the camera, so when you talk, don't forget to look at sometimes the bigger crowd. Okay. So what is European Commission? First, before we go to your question, we are something like, it's a taboo word, federal government, something like. We are not federal government. But we do three things that if you want to think of European Commission, think of three things. Regulation, European regulation, funding, so we do fund projects, innovations, including digital, and soft power of cooperation. And that is what we do to bring people together. So that's where we pay for the table to gather people to work on something. And coalition is an example of a soft power of cooperation. So we went around, we gathered a lot of 40 companies, and we have companies from Telefonica, NEC, Google, and Cisco, but we have also others in the room that are members, Unipartners, yeah, Nokia.
Orange.
Orange is there, of course. Anybody else? Okay. So we have a lot of companies, major companies, IT companies, working together. Why? About 5 years ago, we were receiving as European Commission a lot of reports from companies. My solution cuts 2 billion tons of CO2. Okay. No, my solution cuts 300 tons of this and that. So we said, but how are you calculating it? These reports did not have the weight of a collective, agreed, science-based standard. There are Telefonica calculations, Vodafone calculations, Cisco calculations, and no politician would get in trouble because a Cisco calculated something. But if we all collectively agree and we create a standard, politicians will think about twice to throw that report of enablement. So what we did, we created a group and said, we will jointly with expert groups and scientists agree on a standard. What is the real impact of digitalization? That is the work of the European Green Digital Coalition. Now, the idea is why? Because we want to show that digitalization is a positive. I mean, we have to prove. Maybe we will prove that it's negative, but I'll explain a little bit how the proof goes about. But we want to show that digitalization is a positive force for climate change, so that sustainable finance can notice that and accelerate the sustainability of the critical vertical sectors. Energy, transport, agriculture, music. They like what we're saying.
Entertainment, as we can hear.
So there's a decibel war with the other group there. So we have smart cities and manufacturing. So we have the really important sectors where we want to apply digitalization and show them that actually you cut more emissions than you deploy by deploying digital. Because when you deploy digital, what happens? You have sensors, you have connectivity, you have tablets, laptops, drones, whatever you put in place. All that is emissions. The digital world is not virtual at all. It's very dirty, and it's very material consumption, not only energy, because we think of energy, but it's much more materials than energy. So Orange is there for 15 years. Jean-Manuel is just doing these calculations forever. So we know that there is an impact when you put materials in place to do something. Then the question is, what is it helping with? So in the precision farming, you have to put a lot of sensors, you have to put connectivity, you have to put drones, you have to put satellite connectivity if you want. There are laptops, meteorological stations, cloud services collecting all the data. It's dirty. But the power of that solution is minimizing pesticides, herbicides, fertilizer, optimizing the watering of the ground. And that is a lot of emissions saved, because a lot of chemicals can translate immediately to CO2. So what is the difference? And that is the net difference that we're talking about. So European Green Digital Coalition, with leading partners like Telefonica, is actually developing a net calculator. You put something in place, we calculate the minus and the plus of that digital solution. The net difference is what do we want to come out. If the net is positive, what do? I take that number and I go to EIB, World Bank, my National Development Bank, and say, we are positive. I want green finance to go onto that type of solutions, because that type of solution can accelerate the sustainability of agriculture, energy sector, mobility sector, manufacturing. That is the purpose of Green Digital Coalition. Science-based proof that digitalization is green in a given design, use, and context. And that is the forbidden thing, because so far we say, oh, just trust me, there's no green without digital. We cannot be naive. We cannot sell digitalization as by default green. Digitalization has to be designed, used, and governed properly towards net positive result. If I know what these government rules are, and I keep it in that space, then sustainable finance will flow. If I just say generalities like, just put 5G on this city and the world will be greener, you will shoot yourself in the foot. Generic digitalization, we don't know what the impact is. It can go both ways. But using the guidelines developed by the coalition, we can guarantee that it's positive, and then you can actually scale and drive your business towards net zero. That is the goal of the coalition.
Thanks a lot, Ilias. I think it was a very compelling and convincing introduction. When more than 2 years ago we started these discussions with Ilias and with Jay-Z, I remember one very nice example that Ilias gave me, and he said, if you have a problem, and the problem is that you lost your keys, but you don't have lights, so you don't see where the keys are. You need to put up a torch and see the keys. And the torch for us is precisely the methodology to measure, because if you don't measure, you don't see. So that's what we are doing now in the coalition. But we have on this panel a lot of representatives from the industry who are leading on sustainability. Their bread and butter every day is asking how can they use their own services to green other parts of society and not the economy, but also how they can reduce their own emissions as a business. So I would like to start with Adam from Google, and I would like to ask you, what are some examples, some ways in which a global tech company that operates really truly at a global scale, what are the solutions and the ways in which you can help your clients, your users really, to reduce their own emissions on the enabling side of the story?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm aware this is sort of the last shift in the day. You could be at the hotel having a cocktail, but I appreciate you're here. I can also see some people from earlier sessions. So I think it's a great question. This is the decisive decade. It's why we're all here. I don't need to explain to you why we're all at COP and the challenges. Fundamentally, at Google, we believe technology is key to decarbonisation and the broader sustainability agenda. We actually put out a report last week with BCG, specifically looking at the opportunity for AI and looking at use cases from Google, but from right across the world and others. And it shows that there's a 5 to 10% decarbonisation opportunity using AI by 2030. So just in the next 6-7 years. And to put that in perspective, that's the emissions of Europe. At Google, we think we can help lead this transition in 2 particular ways, through making information accessible and by driving forward innovation. And just to your question, to bring some of that to life. First of all, we think about this sort of in 2 buckets. First of all, how do we empower individuals? And we're very lucky we have billions of people that come to our platform and our tools, whether that's things like YouTube or search or Google Maps. And we really want to help them with the information and the context they need to make more sustainable choices. So first of all on search, and look, we get to see what people are searching for. You can also see it too using Google Trends. But searches on things like electric vehicles, solar panels, heat pumps, they are breakthrough searches, i.e. they're hitting all-time highs. And that's great, but how do we help people find an easier route through to making those more sustainable choices? So if you search for things now like flights or heat pumps or electric vehicles, we're increasingly putting new information out there in ways that can help people make those decisions more easily, such as what is the cost saving of an electric vehicle versus a combustion engine, or what is the distance traveled versus this model versus another model. So we really want to try and make it easier for people. On Google Maps, we have now what we call fuel-efficient routing. So if you're driving somewhere, we use AI to tell you what's the most fuel-efficient route, which is great. It helps save fuel. It also saves emissions, and it saves money. We launched this 2 years ago. It's now saved 2.4 million tons of CO2. That's the equivalent of taking 500,000 fuel-based cars off the road every single year. So that's some examples of what we're doing for individuals, but we also work very closely with what we call partners, and that could be companies, big or small, it could be NGOs, it can be governments, it can be cities, and again, we want to help them with the technology and the information to make these decisions. one of the tools we have is a solution we provide to cities called Environmental Insights Explorer. It covers 42,000 cities. We make it freely available. It gives them insights on transportation data, on buildings emissions, what their opportunity is to deploy solar rooftop, what their opportunity is to deploy trees to improve tree canopies to deal with urban heat islands. So again, it's really giving them the tools not only to understand where they are today, but then to make decisions about what policies or investments they might want to make, and then see, are they actually having the effect? So Dublin's a great example. They want to increase cycling. They've used the data to understand what changes they think they need to make, and they're able to see year on year, is it having the impact that they want? Actually, sticking with transportation, another recent solution we've brought to market is called Greenlight. So if you think about traffic junctions, stop-and-go traffic produces 29 times more emissions than free-flowing traffic. And we've been able to use AI to calculate what are the best settings for traffic lights. And we're able to give that information to cities, and they're able to make those really small adjustments to existing infrastructure, and it has a huge impact. And we've been able to roll this out to 12 cities now, from Abu Dhabi to Manchester, and it's reducing stop-and-go traffic by around 30%. So again, having a really huge impact. And I'll just give one more example, because a lot of the examples I've given are around mitigation. How do we reduce the impact? We all know that we already have the impacts today, so how do we adapt to the changing climate? And we've been doing this work on forecasting with floods. So floods affect around 250,000 people every year, often with devastating consequences. And we're able to use AI now to predict floods up to 7 days in advance, really giving those warnings to individuals and aid agencies. So again, another example of how we're able to use this technology for a positive impact.
Thanks a lot, Adam, and I think these examples are very practical, and they make us understand what it means to have a greening by Google. I'll come back later to you on the greening of Google, because of course that's part of an essential part of the equation. I would like now to go to Maya, who works for one of the leading telecom groups in the world, Telefonica. Of course, all of these things that we just heard from Adam wouldn't be possible if we didn't have the most advanced connectivity infrastructure, 5G, fiber, and so on. So I would like to start by asking you, which role does the latest infrastructure generation have in enabling all the solutions that we have been discussing so far?
Well, I think, first of all, thank you for organizing this panel. I think it's really good to share, the panel, Google and Cisco, so we are like the whole value chain of the digitalization, which I think indeed is so relevant, because this, as I think Elias shared before, it's not about one part of the value chain. We need everything, and the network itself at the backbone, the essential part, but we need the services on top of that. So I think what we have to do is we have to provide the most efficient networks, that the net positive is as bigger as possible. So we have to green off also our own digital sector, and that is for sure. So deploying next generation networks, deploying 5G, 6G will come, optical fiber is not enough. So we need these networks itself are 80% or 90% even in case of the 5G more efficient than the legacy networks. And we are deploying the most efficient networks, and that is fantastic. But we need to do more. We need to manage them in the most efficient way. We need to think about circularity. We need to base the electricity consumption in renewables. So we need to think about cooling the system to be more efficient, based in free cooling. So think about really the greening off. And we need to help our clients to use all the streaming, all the platforms in the most efficient way in terms of the traffic that we are going to consume. So the greening off, it's critical to provide this net final emissions as bigger as possible. Because digital, it's going to be critical to scale and to increase the ambitions of the green transition. So we need the digital, but it's for sure that we need to make it greener. In terms of our greening by, what is our contribution? As I mentioned before, is essential. So IoT, for instance, so the connectivity, the Internet of Things, it's connectivity. So we need the smart meters, no? For instance, to deploy the smart grids, the electricity grids have to be smarter to connect all the renewables, to integrate renewables in the market. We need the electricity grids to be smarter. And we are already deploying some services, for instance, in Telefónica, we are working very, very closely to the electricity network operator, and we are helping them to measure how the weather is going to change, the temperature is changing, so to increase the amount of electricity that's going through the networks, through the electricity networks. And thus, we are increasing the interoperability of the electricity itself, and we are also providing information of demand and offer on the electricity that is going to increase the amount of electricity that's going, and to decrease all the losses of the electricity in the meanwhile. So I think IoT and the smart meter is critical for the smart grids. Another example is related with adaptation, and that's, for instance, coming from water scarcity. We need to really improve the way we manage water, irrigation, for instance, in agriculture. We are working very closely to our clients related with agriculture and farmers, and we are helping all the irrigation, so really to smart all the agricultural sector. We need this connectivity and these IoT solutions. Another things related with adaptation and water, because I'm coming from Spain, and we know that water scarcity is going through many countries, but in Spain we are seeing this already now, working with all the distribution of the water, so all the networks that are distributing water to reduce all the losses, the water losses, and we need for that connectivity. So there are many examples coming from connectivity, but again, we need the different layers of the digitalization, because you will need a smarter, operability, maybe coming from a smartphone. So I think that what is very interesting is that we are going now to see, thanks to this methodology, to have like a common approach. No one can claim I'm the only one contributing, but we can say we are all contributing to this net positive. But we have to do this our own homework with greening off our own sector, and we have challenges here also as well.
Thanks a lot, Maya, for bringing in this relationship, intimate relationship between the greening by and the greening of aspect, and also for showing we started from the most user-facing company, Google. We went to the networks that are the backbone, and of course then there is the intelligence inside those networks and that moves with those networks. And intelligence is linked to the question of data and observability. As Ilias was mentioning before, if there is no data and if you cannot observe what's happening, you cannot take the right decisions and you cannot be credible either. So I would like to ask you a bit, Pastora, from the perspective of Cisco, what are the solutions that you are now putting out there to allow this data and observability of data aspect?
Thank you, Alessandro. I think as a technology company, we've talked a lot about the enabling role of IT. And of course, as Cisco, we also focus on reducing our own footprint through innovation, through circularity. But more importantly, and Elias, you underscored this point, the enabling role of our sector to green all other sectors, whether it's a smart grid, whether it's smart homes, whether it's a smart manufacturing, is absolutely critical. But we can understand the impact and we cannot take action without the data. So as many global companies, what we see is that it is challenging because data is all over the place in our company. And data is not only the data we have at Cisco, but it's the data of our suppliers, the data of our partners. So a year ago, and we have our Chief Sustainability Officer here, Mary, we started a program at Cisco called the Cisco Foundational Data, which is about the Cisco Sustainability Foundational Data, which is about collecting data in a verifiable manner from different parts of Cisco, whether it's logistics, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's the energy use of our product, whether it's tracking packaging, and also from our suppliers and partners, and bring that data into a foundational model in a way that is verifiable, in a way that has quality, in a way that has governance with leaderships in different parts of the company, and then make that data accessible, not only to Cisco, so that we can design better products, that we can take smart decisions, but also to our suppliers and partners. And our thinking here is that, in a way, if you think about all the ESG regulations coming our way, we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to understand this data. And so this is going to help us monitoring and reporting, and also help our customers, our partners also to do their own reporting. But it's not only about reporting. It's also about getting the insights so that you can take actions and then you can make an impact. So with that, based on this foundational model, we are starting to create use cases. I mean, one of the use cases is the simulator, so that our customers and partners can see what is the energy use of their network infrastructure, and then take decisions based, for example, on, do I need to refresh my products? And what would that be, the cost of refreshing my products? And then, of course, we will take back any product as well, right? So talking about the circularity. The other area that we are working as well, and actually if you have time, we have our demo in the green zone. It's about dashboards for data centers, which consume a lot of energy. And so the idea is to do a vendor agnostic, so not just Cisco, that you could track the energy use of a data center. What is the energy mix? How much solar are you using? How much gas? How much types of energy you're using? You can track the energy consumption of different racks, and even go to the level of the device. And then you can take decisions. Do I need to shift some of my workloads to data centers that have a higher use of solar, for example? Or do I need to shift workloads to different racks that are consuming less, so it allows me to do more efficient cooling? And then finally, we're also partnering with many applications like that give you insights on carbon emission. So we did a partnership with Climatic, for example, and it's about putting our platforms, our observability platform, available for these applications to, again, give our customers and partners insights in their carbon emission. And I think all of these examples underline the importance of collaboration. And I think, Elias, I want to commend the Commission for taking the lead on the EGDC, the European Green Digital Coalition, because we can then share what we are doing, learn from what others are doing, and come together, because a lot of it is also about creating common standards, so that we know what we are saying actually, is reliable and is verifiable. So I'm going to stop there and maybe come back.
Thanks a lot, Pastora. This brought an additional element into our discussion, but now I want to go even at a more foundational basis with Chris. I got to know him in the past couple of days, and he told me about the amazing things that you can do with R&D, and which is in the end the basis of the innovations that we were discussing until now. NEC is very strong in R&D in our field. So I would like to ask you a bit, what are the solutions from a research and development perspective that you're looking at? How do you help your clients, your customers, to become greener?
Okay, great. Once again, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to speak here. Maybe I'll add a little bit about NEC, because a lot of people, I will say, I've only been at NEC for 3.5 years, and I wasn't sure I knew what it did. I knew what it used to do. It used to build networks, used to build big supercomputers, was the core of digitization, right, the start of all that. What I was surprised about, and part of why I joined, is that they do digital health, right, so they do targeted tumor vaccines, they do digital cities, digital finance, they have submarine cable systems, they have satellite systems, they sort of touch all aspects of society, and they have customers in all of those spaces. And as an R&D leader, that's the best opportunity possible, because the key to doing good research is to actually have good problems, right? And good problems only come from customers. But the core of what we try to do is you never want to be solving a specific problem with a specific solution, because that solution only works in that case. So what you always want to do is find the general solution to that specific problem, and then see if there are other opportunities to use that kind of solution. And I think if we sort of take what's been discussed here and go at a higher level, the general problem here is what I think is the biggest societal thing that we need to deal with. And it's really the sort of collaborative optimization across all of society, right? So that is certainly about carbon and utilization, but it's also things like COVID, right? How do countries make decisions when they have limited information and limited ability to share that information between them that are optimal for everyone and not just an individual, right? So if we look at all of these cases, right, the optimization solution that goes in, you need to do and sort of know two things, right? You need to have a metric, right? So what is good, right? And the key that we often forget about is that it's not just one thing. There are many different aspects, right? Do you pick A or do you pick B? Well, maybe A is good at some things and B is better at other things, right? So how do we as a society decide on what are the important pieces, right? That's our metric, and how do you do that in a way that's broad? And then once you have the metric, you need to have the information to actually do the optimization across that range. And I think if we look at the sort of overall problem here, one is the overall demand, the sort of relentless people wanting more, and that means our energy usage is never going to go down. Right? I hate to say it, it's just never going to go down. Policy can make us put a better metric on that, so we recognize the unseen costs of that, right? And that's a critical thing. That's one thing we try to do. But then the other side is, how do we drive for more and more efficient systems? Right? So how do you make supply match demand? And if I make supply match demand, I'm using that more as efficiently as possible. So those are the things we're building. We're building tools in the AI space that instead of deploying with a fixed amount of resources, they dynamically change the amount of resources. One of the things NEC does, we're sort of #1 in biometrics for face recognition and things like that. If you build a system that takes a camera and uses the same amount of resources on every frame, even if there's not a person, you're wasting an enormous amount of energy. So how do you optimize the amount of resources you apply matched upon your expected value that you're getting, right? Sort of differential utilization. That's one. The second one on the metric piece is, how do we understand how to go not just one step forward, but maybe multiple steps forward? Humans are really good at knowing the implication of one choice. But once that choice turns into someone else's choice, it becomes very, very difficult. So we're building systems that allow, looking at say, scope 3 carbon emissions, where, I said it in an earlier session, and I'll double down now, everybody lies. And maybe if they're not lying, they just don't know, because it's an impossibly difficult thing to compute. So how do you build a framework that allows people to actually reason about these kinds of things in order to make effective decisions? So the short answer to your question is we try to build systems that allow for collaborative decision-making that is informed by the data that is there, allows for a better understanding of the metric, and allows for people to be supported in the decisions that they take with respect to optimizing their process or the things that they actually do. And we apply those kinds of general solutions to specific solutions in a wide variety of different industries.
Thanks a lot, Chris, for bringing in this very fundamental way to approach the question, as a good researcher should do. Maybe for the second round, and to start a bit the discussion, when you go about greening your company, I'm thinking, Adam, about Google. You explained us before what the solutions that you offer to your users are, but of course beyond that there is the infrastructure, there is the data centers, there is the CDNs, and all of this, as Chris was reminding us, only drives more requests for energy and therefore also for emissions. So how are you coping with that at Google?
Yeah, thank you. And look, it's a really important point. We can't just focus on the good stuff. We've got to take care of our, make sure our own houses are in order. It's something that Google's worked on for a long, long time. Actually, we were one of the first companies to sign large power purchase agreements back in 2010. By 2017, we were matching 100% of our electricity use with renewable energy on a global basis. We've done that every year since. And that's great, but we need to keep being ambitious. We've got an ambitious net zero 2030 goal. That's our own operation and our value chain, so scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. And actually within that, we're going even further on the energy side. So at the moment, once we get to the end of the year and say how much electricity do we use, have we bought enough to match it? We're very aware that there are times of the year and parts of the grid where we're still reliant on fossil fuel, and we don't think that's good enough. So we're moving to something called 24/7 carbon-free energy, which means we're going to source local carbon-free energy every hour of every single day, and we think that's really important. But I do want to put some of this sort of energy use and emissions into perspective here. So the global data center energy use is estimated to be about 1 to 1.3% of total energy use. Similar number, I believe, for the sort of telco sector. So that's an energy use. And when you look at data centers from an emissions point of view, actually, if you look at who are the biggest buyers of clean energy, it's the Googles, it's the Microsofts, it's the Amazons of the world. So actually, the emission numbers are much, much smaller. So I'm not saying that we don't need to focus on this, but we do need to put it in perspective. The other thing I would say is I think certainly the technology companies have been really focused on efficiency. So our data centers, our energy use, we have three. Sorry, I'm just getting late in the day now, so I'm getting my numbers muddled up. But yeah, we have 3 times as much as compute power now for the same amount of energy we did 5 years ago. Okay, and global energy use has remained relatively flat, actually, for the data center industry. So yes, we have to keep focusing on it. Yes, we have to keep driving efficiency. Actually, we've got a long history of doing this, and we need to keep doing it. And I say I'm pretty proud of what the industry is doing. We've still got a lot to do, and there's a lot of collaboration going. But I just wanted to sort of put it in perspective. But yeah, absolutely important we focus on it. The final thing I'll say, and I do want to hand over to the others, says, and this is why working with EGDC on the methodology is so important, because we want to talk about the benefit of these solutions, but it's really important we do have these metrics where we can look at the impact of our operations and look at the net number in a way that can be credible and where we can work across sectors to really come up with something we all stand behind.
Thanks a lot, Adam, because as a good panelist should do, you gave me the hint for continuing the discussion and for my next question. EGDC, so this methodology that we are developing with the partners, with the European Commission and with an advisory board. The core, the starting point are the use cases. You need to have examples, concrete examples, on which then you build your data models. So I would like to go a bit to Maya to explain us a bit about these use cases, and from the Telefonica perspective, what are the use cases that they are looking at, and how do you go about also the measurement of the positive impact?
Thank you for the question, Alessandro. So what we have been doing since the beginning of the methodology, and because it was the purpose of the methodology, was to go to this calculation through use cases. And we have been working with our main clients. So, for instance, the industry, to identify which kind of services coming from the digital solutions we're helping them, and to try to measure. It was quite a difficult exercise, because indeed sometimes they don't even measure the baseline. So it's difficult to know what is the baseline of any industrial process in terms of the carbon emissions, and to measure what is the specific impact of the solution, of connectivity solutions. So we have been working very closely with many different sectors. I think we have succeeded with the electricity sector, so really the network statistics, as I mentioned before, and also the mobility sector. I think in the transportation, I think we have also succeeded to measure and to calculate what was the baseline before including Internet of Things, so IoT solutions and digital solutions on top of the connectivity, and to help fleet management to be more efficient in terms of the logistics sector. that are the most successful examples. I have to mention that these examples of specific case studies are very useful, although I think we have to think about the broader picture, because we need to really show how the digital sector is critical, for instance, and I think Google explained a lot of use cases that are more not in specific use cases for niche sector, but are more cross to the whole society. So how we use Google Maps, how we use and how we are going to be more smart in our home management, and how we work from home, how we avoid traveling, because we are doing so many video conferencing from home, and I think commuting is really decreasing in many cities, and I think this cross use of digitalization is also critical, and we have not afford to go through these kind of cases already from the methodology, but I think it's also critical because we need to really raise awareness about how digitalization is helping all the different sectors and the society itself through the different kind of habits to decarbonize. And I think if we succeed to do that, we will succeed to identify all the digital ecosystem as green. Not as green because it is, as green because it's making its own homework to be green, and because it's helping other sectors to decarbonize. So I think we have to do more in terms of these cross changes, how we are contributing to the change of society. And I think add examples that Google mentioned before, that I mentioned before, and I think connectivity is critical in all the different sectors. So I think we, as I mentioned, we have succeeded with these niche examples, but I think we have to go more and to go further in the methodology in the future.
Thanks a lot, Maya, because this brings in a pretty essential aspect. You mentioned the ecosystem. And the question here is, how do you scale up these solutions and bring them also to the vertical industries, as we call them, that are not using them already? So here I would like to bring in Chris and ask you if you can explain us a bit about your Green X vision and how do you engage the different customers and the different vertical industries into basically adopting solutions, into becoming effective.
Yeah, and it's dangerous to ask a researcher how to actually modify, but that won't stop me from giving you my opinion and how this space goes. Yeah. So I think going back to what we were talking about, if you want to try and optimize things, you need to know where you are. You need to know where you're going, the metric, and more than those two things, you need to know the first step to take. Right? You need to know the direction to go in order to actually start achieving that piece. And I think that what we've been trying to do, as I said, sort of developing these solutions that allow us to better understand the collective system and to utilize that to make more effective decisions. The way we've been looking at it is large corporations are their own ecosystem in many of these cases, right? If you look at the supply chain for a given company, once the company hits a certain size, solving that problem is the same as solving the much bigger problem, right? So the adoption piece is really trying to find large-scale customers that will interact with us, share the data with us, allow us to start building these models that allow them to understand what the potential next steps are and the implications of taking those steps. And I think that is our, at least, first step into this space. But the movement beyond that is really the idea, and again, I'll sort of go down the geek path one second, which is if I optimize for myself, I will get a solution, right? If you optimize for yourself, you will get a solution. It is very likely that those two solutions are not going to be the same. If we jointly decide to work together and collaborate, it's probably true that we're going to get a solution that's actually better than those two. But we need to share information, right? So that's where the communication, that's where the platform comes in. And we have to actually have some level of trust that you're not trying to manipulate me into doing something that makes things better for you, but not better for me. So if you look at that, and again, I will dream big, right? If we look at the internet of today, right, it has revolutionized communication. Right? It has allowed people to communicate in a much better fashion. But we've not used that for these kind of global scale optimization questions, and it is the natural place that it has to go. Right? There has to be, and I like to try and steal back a term, Internet of Things. Right? We've all heard about Internet of Things, and it was the thing that was going to be big, 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 big. We're going to sense the whole world. We're going to do this. I would rather use Internet of Things for the optimization of the global supply chain. Right? We found that the global supply chain was not robust to COVID. It was not robust to global conflict. Lots of people said, "Oh, deglobalization. We're all going to, contract and have our own little countries." That's never going to happen, right? Just look around. It's never going to happen. But we're going to get to a reglobalization, which is really optimizing not just for just-in-time lowest cost, but just-in-time lowest cost robustness carbon. Right? We collectively can agree on what is the metric, and we can have a platform that actually does the Internet of Things optimization for moving physical goods from A to B. And I think that you start that inside a company, and if companies start utilizing that to do their own optimization, if big company A and big company B realize if we collaborate on this, it's better for both of us, and then if country A and country B say we need to have a platform for our companies to have this conversation, that is the naive researcher view of where the world could actually go, and we could do that. And the nice piece about this, it doesn't require anybody to be good. Everybody can be evil to try and make as much money as they possibly can. They will build this system, make lots of money, and as a side effect, it will reduce carbon, drive for efficiency, and all the social good that we want will come as an offshoot. Right? I'm also a global optimist as far as a researcher is concerned, but I think when you can align the commercial benefit with the social benefit, you win. And I think if we can do that at scale, right, internet scale between companies, then we all win.
Thank you, Chris, because this is much needed optimism, and it also explains why it is, in a way, in the interest of all the players here to go down the route. So maybe even Machiavelli could agree, there are incentives there, and incentives are what matters. The European Green Digital Coalition is trying to build one first brick of that wall, which is having an agreed way of understanding the use cases, of measuring them, and of getting to the methodology. The methodology is being finalized as we speak, these days, these weeks. But of course, we are already thinking of what's next. So here, I would like to bring in Pastore with your viewpoint. Even though the current methodology is still not final, but how do you see the future of the methodology?
Right, so more than the future of the methodology, I think the future of the coalition, which I think is absolutely critical, because again, when we are hearing everyone talking, the more we collaborate, the more impact we're going to make. So I think the methodologies that have been already discussed and developed, we need to move to action, to the co-creation of solutions, to really show that it works, that it has an impact. So that's one area. I think the second area, and particularly I'm thinking through the European lens here, we have a lot of policies and regulations coming our way. So I don't know where Elias is now, but I think one of the things that it would be interesting to think about is how do we connect the work we are doing with the policies and regulations that are coming our way. And particularly I'm thinking about not only the Net Zero Act, not only the policy around clean energy and renewables, but also about the product passport, which is really going to be a very important piece of legislation. And it's about understanding the energy use of the products, the life cycle, end to end. And so the work of this coalition can be actually very helpful for companies to get ready. so that when the legislation comes into place, we are ready. So this is the way we're thinking as well as we are developing our data foundation, that we're going to get in ahead, anticipating that policy. And then the last thing I would say, thinking about scale and thinking about that the whole world is trying to, understand, how do we do this? How do we scale the work of the coalition a little bit more international? I mean, in many of the conversations I've had in the UAE, it's like, oh, it seems to me that Europe, in certain way, in methodologies, in policies, ahead of other parts of the world. So how do we leverage the work of the coalition more internationally? Now, of course, I'm thinking about the US and EU Transatlantic Trade Technology Council, the TTC, which is also working on standards and methodologies around climate. That's one possibility, but also more broadly. And then one final point is about financing climate technology. I was absolutely amazed these 3 days here about how many entrepreneurs are working on climate tech, how many young entrepreneurs are working on climate tech. So I think as the coalition, as the commission, as companies, we all have our own financing. We at Cisco, we have 100 million financing new climate tech technology. So is that something that we can work together? What are the climate tech solutions? And how do we help finance these solutions together? So that's another thought.
Thanks a lot, Pastora, because the globalization of the methodology is one key topic, I think, and being in Ethno, but also in JZ, that is the Global Sustainability Initiative, we think a lot global, and maybe JZ is one place to start taking the EGDC global, because we have people from Taiwan to Australia to the United States, and of course Europe is very strong. Now, we have little time left, and I would like to conclude in this way. I will ask to each of the panelists to give us their one reason for optimism after the second day of COP. Of course, we all read newspapers. There's a lot of doom and gloom these days. But when you are here, you see people from very diverse countries that maybe are even in conflict in some cases, but they are working together on this. So I'll go around the table, and then because the European Green Digital Coalition is not possible without the collaboration of the Commission, I will ask to Ilias to say in 1 minute his concluding words. But let's go around and see what's your one reason of being an optimist, Adam.
We've just spent the last hour talking about action and solutions. We need to get moving. We have the solutions. We need to deploy them. They're here today.
Pastora?
So 2 reasons. I've been in previous COPs. I think this is the first COP where I really truly see businesses, NGO, civil society, and governments at large. And I think that's a reason for optimism, because we need to work together. And the second one is the youth. It's amazing. All these youth entrepreneurs focusing on climate technology. That gives me a lot of hope.
And our youth too on the panel. Chris, your one reason for being an optimist.
So my biggest problem is coming up with one, right? But I think, and I'll show you just how optimistic I am. I don't see any conflict or any barrier, right? The things we need to do are things that technology we already know how to do. That there is a willingness to discuss, and the overall benefit is, again, not an altruistic one, but a commercial one. So I guess my one piece would be that we are driven to a good solution via many different metrics, and none of them require someone to give something away at some level. And if nobody has to give anything away, we will eventually get to that best solution.
Thanks, Chris. Maya, your one reason for optimism.
I think there are many, actually. I've been in many COPs, and I agree with Pastor. I think in this one I have seen like a lot of movement coming from the business, and I think solutions will come from business. So I think it's that is a good reason for us to optimism. But another one, it's coming that from, there's clear vision. So we know what we have to do, and we have, and solutions are already here. So it's a matter of decision. And I think the international agency has told us what we have to do in terms of renewable, in terms of efficiency, and in terms of fossil fuels. So I guess we'll reach something hopefully this year. But anyway, there will be a COP29 next year again.
Thanks, Maya. And then, Ilias, your 1 minute wrap up and conclusion from this panel.
So, I'm here because you want to thank me, but I'm taking that and I give it the thanks to some other people here, okay? So first, I want to thank the partners of the coalition, so the members you see and you've heard, we already talked about them, but there were partners that were animating that work, and they were led by Jesse. And we have the president of Jesse here, Jim Gowan, that is actually invested in this venture. So the project itself didn't pay all that expense, but there is investment of the partners. The second partner is Etno, and you represent them, and Jesse. There is a partner called Digital Europe that has big partnerships in terms of digitalization. Another one is called Digital SME Alliance, because 90% of jobs and 90% of things are happening through SMEs in Europe, especially. So the fabric of our economy is SMEs. And we need to make sure whatever we do here, we actually translate it into a practical guidance of how do I, as SME, take digitalization and I move to sustainable business that is profitable and grows. And that's where the youngsters come in. We need to give them guidance because 27% of investment today in Europe, so we spend 45 billion between now and September, this year only, 27% of all the investment went to climate tech. The second sector is healthcare, it's like 15%. So the climate is attracting the best talents and the best money. They need guidance, so the solutions they develop do not do harm to the environment, that they keep net positive. So thanks to them and GSMA. GSMA was also a partner in the project. But I want to thank especially one person in this room, and that is the one that brought digitalization to be integral part of COP. It never happened before. It's the first year where digitalization is a big pillar of COP sessions. Digitalization was like another planet that they had nothing to say about COP in the last COPs. It's just recently that people realized, but there is this mega trend. How is that influencing what I'm talking about 27 times before? So, and that is Masamba, who actually makes sure that it's on Masamba Trail. And you make sure that these sessions are actually on YouTube, right? Very good.
No, thank you so much, Elias. Very pleased to have you here. We strongly believe that the revolution that is required to be able to provide flourishing life to the many people in a healthy planet cannot happen without digital technology. Digital technology will be the key enabler that will facilitate the transition toward the future that we would like to build. And this is why, while at the COP there is 1 day for digital, here we have 2 days for digital, because we consider that this is what will enable the future that we want to build. Thank you again for your contribution.
Thank you, Masamba. Thank you. Thank you also to our audience, to the UNFCCC for hosting us. And if you want to know more about the Green Digital Coalition, you'll find us on greendigitalcoalition.eu. Thanks a lot.